what we'd like to talk about today is everybody talks about innovation, but how the hell do you actually make it happen, right? So we'll try to cover that. We have two guys who've really built strong businesses themselves out here, very innovative businesses. Before really getting into the businesses, I really want to ask Kumar. Kumar, are you innovative, and what makes you innovative?
I attempt to be innovative. Right? I try my best as a CEO of this company. I heard Mr. Ketan talking about every aspect of my day-to-day. I always ask question to myself, and the same question gets asked to my team, every employee that in the company. Are you creating something? Are you maintaining something? Or are you destroying? Right? And in our world, in corporate world, there are only three things that you can do. You can create, you can maintain, you can destroy. Right.
Rajendra, are you innovative? And if so, what makes you innovative?
Well, for me, it's just that, I just keep looking for what excites me is, people, I look for problems, okay? If there is a problem, and that's what excites me, of course, it will engage my mind, because that's the root of the innovation that will come from. And the moment you have figured out there's a problem, it's remained unsolved for some time, be it technology problem, market problem, be it any social problem. The moment the problem is known and you are engaging in that and doing forward thinking, that's what leads to innovative. And that's my, one of my really hobbies that excites me.
Great. So I'm now going to ask you. So Kumar runs Bill Junction. Many of you may or may not have heard of the company. It's a pretty big leader in kind of really taking India from the paper age of bills to the electronic age of bills. Kumar, tell us in a few minutes how your company is innovative and how it has failed to be innovative and what you're trying to do about it.
Right. So this goes back into the brand Bill Junction, right? Very powerful brand. We started in 2000 as a company. And subsequently, we got all the funding that was required to make it big. Then what happens in the journey, the company start looking for growth, right? And in looking for growth, then you start looking for areas which you will believe at that point of time, because you are high. The company succeeded, you've got funding, and now you start looking for areas, whatever you believe you're going to touch is going to be successful, right? In the process then, while the company started in 2000, then we got into, BPO was a boom. We got into BPO. Then we saw technology boom. We got into technology. Then what happened was, in the process, we started looking, when I looked back, when I joined this company about 4 years back, we started soul searching ourselves. What's our core? What are we doing? What's the purpose of our existence, right? And then it all started about when we realized that we started diverting from our core competency, right? This needs to get backed by then what customers are wanting us. It's any innovation. See, for us to create a shareholder value, right? We got to be in the business of making money. Simple. And if money will be made only when someone sees value and someone is willing to pay for that value. So
you obviously kind of went through a boom, you came down, and you pulled yourself out again, and you're continuing to pull yourself out. I'll come back to that. Let me come back to that. But Rajendra, you run SureWaves, which is an interesting media company, and you insert ads. You kind of aggregate lots of niche television channels and insert ads using technology. So tell me about who is the driver of the innovation in the company, and how does this innovation come about in your firm?
Okay, this actually innovation, the driver for this was, when I was just about starting. And so we were a couple of friends. In fact, we were brainstorming. And we just chanced upon that the digital world was actually making, you yourself do digital marketing. So digital world has made rapid strides. And we had, after maybe about a decade of struggle, the digital companies had really found their groove. And you had very large successes. So Google, Yahoo, Microsoft. So a lot of people had found the right business model. Then I looked at the media industry and said, okay, digital was definitely a growing force, but where the market was. Still, currently, and for a foreseeable future, it would continue to be the largest medium is the television. Okay, so television is extremely large, but the opportunity was that there was not enough technology that had been infused into the mainstream media. So digital was coming up, and it's continued to be growing, and that's where I found the opportunity. So the big opportunity was that the big trend is that the media, like anything else, is getting fragmented by the day. Okay, any media, be it print, be it television, be it digital. So as long as they keep fragmenting, now that creates certain opportunities and creates certain problems. So it was creating a huge problem for advertisers. Okay? They were just not able to figure out how do they communicate with their audience, and the media was also getting expensive. So what we figured out is that there's a long tail of the television channels, which actually garner a lot of viewership, are not able to attract the attention of the advertisers, and advertisers are not able to go and figure out how to talk to audiences. So that's where we found the solution and said, okay, we created an audience aggregation platform driven by technology, which can be very efficiently scaled up. And today, the journey of, by the time we built the technology and started deploying it, it took us about 3 years in terms of deploying, covering the whole country. And now we are covered in about 450 television channels. They use our technology. And we are the single window gateway for national advertisers. And we are solving the problem for advertisers. On the other hand, we are solving the problem for the partners that the revenue which they were not able to tap, now they are able to tap. So that's how we went about the solution. And it's just gaining traction as we go along.
So what's really interesting is I'm talking here with two people who obviously built innovative product. We've talked about the fact that India has never really been known for product. We've always been known for services. We give it a nice name. We call it technology, but basically the correct name is सस्ते में कर लेंगे, right? तुम जो भी सफ़ेद चमड़े के लिए $100 लेते हो, हम उस $10 में करा देंगे. Now we've really grown on that business, and not just that, our entire education system, our training system is entirely been built around that. When you're at school, you're told, he got 99 on 100, you got only 98 on 100. Why can't you be as good as him? We're never told to be separate. We're told to be like everybody else. And also when you go out of school and you go to college, when Infosys or somebody comes to recruit, you're told everybody wants to go and get the same job. Everybody, so essentially you're never told to be different. You're always taught be like somebody else, right? And so which is why you have lots of hundreds of thousands of clones at places like, the TCSs and the Wipros and Infosys and so on and so forth of the world, where you've been trained right from the beginning to be like everybody else. And we've talked about this, that this is really a lot of our contribution. Now, the big challenge out here is we know that essentially if all you're doing is something based on I'm cheaper than you, then somebody's going to be cheaper than you. As we've all discussed, the BPOs came and then, Vietnam took over and the KPOs came and the Philippines took over. So suddenly everybody's saying, Bhaiya, we want to move upline, we want to do now more knowledge base and blah, 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 all of that stuff, right? Now, amidst all this, here we have product startups where suddenly you're told, hey, you're supposed to think. You're not just supposed to, some guy will give you an order, as a design banao, tum ye bana do, right? So how do you find people? Because you can't be the only innovative person in the company. You can't be the only innovative person in the company. How do you find people that buck this trend and that actually can think innovatively in your company, even though when they come from an educational system, a training system, a college system, which fights innovation at every step of the way? How do you do that?
Well, the way when, typically I'll give you some how organization transitions first. And moment from startup, it becomes mature, the brand is established, inertia starts soaking into the company, right? And you start drifting away from customers. And then the moment you start drifting away from customers and your employees, that's when you start faltering. What we did, the first thing we did was top 30 people of the company go in the market, talk to individual customers, end consumers, corporates, we work with banks. Being in electronic payments, you are all our customers, right? And you have a feedback. You want a certain convenience. And I'll just give you a few interesting, and then you'll get some data points. That data point needs to get analyzed and converted into what next. So I'll give you some example how we did. When we surveyed end consumers, we got 3 insights when it comes to what end consumers want. One, they want to pay we all want to pay when we want to pay. If you get a credit card statement on 15th, you're not going to end up paying on 15th or 16th. You will end up paying on 30th. You will even risk of overshooting the deadline and pay late penalty, because you want to control the time. The second aspect, the consumers come and tells us, you want the flexibility on place. If I'm in Delhi today, I want to make payment out of Delhi. If I'm in Bangalore, out of Bangalore. If I'm in Connaught Place, I want to make payment out of Connaught Place, not in Faridabad. Right? So you want the flexibility on place. The third element that came up was in terms of you want to control the mode. So all of us in our wallet will have cash, credit card, debit card. Our extended wallet will have checkbook. But look, subconsciously we want to control by seeing whom we are paying. You want to control the mode. Wherever you see high risk, you will pay cash. Cash on delivery is picking up big in India. Right? Wherever you're comfortable, you'll start using electronic. Wherever you see comfort, checks. Combination of this now, customer is telling us. We went to the corporates. Corporates gave us feedback, and we asked corporates, do you have a digital payment strategy? 9 out of 10 corporates companies came back and said, okay, many people have come and asked, do you have a sales strategy, customer selling strategy? What about digital payment strategy? Now imagine for corporates who wants to acquire a customer in the digital era, do not have a digital payment strategy. Then we went to banks. How do you service your corporate clients, your end consumers? Then they gave a feedback, we have legacy systems, we cannot change so fast, and so on and so forth. Now all these valuable data was taken by the team. Then we said, if you remember, where we are going to create value, who's going to pay for that value, how you can sustain with that value so that you can create differentiation. That's when all this data made us relook at how we're going to strategize, what kind of products we need to create, what kind of differentiation we're going to create, right? So any innovation that we do, there are only two purposes that have. Either it has to bring some convenience to someone, and for that convenience they're willing to pay, right? Or it has to bring in some efficiency, so it allows me to improve my bottom line. So innovation can be beneficial to external, innovation can also be beneficial within the organization, right? And that's how you create money.
So let me come to you, Rajendra. I mean, how do you find people to work with you in a company around innovation when our entire ecosystem does not seem to support innovation?
Yeah, actually, you hit it on the nail, that how do you get say today, if you want to build something very ambitious, it is just not going to be one-person team. So you have to have the environment in the team where everybody's thinking innovatively. Now, how do you make sure that you get the right people? So that's where, say initially, of course, and then you need to be able to drive that there's a shared ownership, and you're finding people who are willing to share the big picture, the big cause, and they're really not working for a small low-hanging fruit. A low-hanging fruit, I would say, is that you're working for every month we get a packet of salary. That's a low-hanging fruit. You sell something, as you said, I can sell my service and I can get something fast. It's a low-hanging fruit. But while interacting with folks, you want to see that my person may be very high caliber, but does he share the passion? Does he share the passion to create, break out, and go and attain world leadership? So you're actually, when you're trying to talk to people, in your friend circle or people as you're building the company further, that's the most important thing to look at. That do they share the passion? Do they have the sense of ownership? And then, very important, is that when you're trying and talk with people, initial team at least, you want to see, and I do take personal interest in that are we talking to people who are thinking? While a small interaction can always bring out that, are you able to think why you did what you did? And if the problem was slightly changed, are you still able to think and come up with a solution? Maybe the wrong solution, but are you thinking? Okay, so once that happens, then you know that this is the DNA that's going to vibe well with creating a product which is not going to give you a result. And for example, in our case, the technology building and fine-tuning and making the market worthy itself took about 3 to 4 years before we hit the right sweet spot. So somebody has to have a patience, and then should not have the big company glamour that, okay, I'm working in a small startup. And so he should be a long runner, has the passion, and ultimately you want to beat the world. Okay, and are you able to find that passion in the person that the team member who's coming on? And very important, the alignment across the organization has to be there. So, those are the things that you sense, and you find innovators who will create the leadership.
So
product.
I've always had this problem. So I've so far invested in about 50 companies, and across these companies, I have maybe 8,000 people who work indirectly for, for the places I've funded. I think the biggest issue is to first find the right HR manager. If you don't find the right HR person, you're going to end up with. So I remember in one case, this was an advertising firm that we had invested in. I kept getting really copywriters who could not write very well. So I kind of went up the process and said, can you explain to me what are the norms that you're using to, to select your pool of copywriters? He said, for everything. See, for designers, we said, do you know Photoshop? For writers, we said, do you know Microsoft Word? Right. That's almost like saying, knowing Microsoft Word cannot be a qualification for you to be a writer, right? So we had to actually change that norm, and many other norms we broke. I mean, I keep telling people, look, if I am an investor in your firm, I'm a 12th class pass, I'm not even a graduate. How dare you put in your firm something saying graduates required? Right. So one of my conditions was you take that out. So of course, HR managers fought, but suddenly they came back and said, when you take that out, it sets them free to say, okay, there's no qualification. And then they came back and said, we want another thing, we want differential salary for MBAs versus just graduates. I said, I agree, MBAs should start at 15% less than graduates. There was a huge hue and cry. I said, of course, MBA, he's learned all this stuff, which is all useless. I have to actually take the nonsense out of his head and bring him up to a level where he's a non-MBA. So then it'll take some time. So we'll have to give them 15% less. Again, of course, finally there was a fight till we finally agreed that, okay, they can come with the same salary as graduates. I was only half joking because I wanted to sit with the HR managers and tweak that, because everybody says PhD matlab zyada milega, MBA matlab aur zyada milega, and all of this stuff, right? Yeah. So by doing that at the base level, we kind of figured suddenly the market opens up. Even people who are out there who say, there are many people who say, I don't know if I'm good enough because I'm not this MBA, I'm not this big graduate, but these are the people who are jugadus. Yeah, right? And these are the people who actually made a huge difference after coming into business. Is there anything you've learned on the HR side in your company that you want to share here?
Some of the insights that you talked about, Mahesh, is apt, right? Getting the right talent has become the core competency. Now, the way I see from the organization point of view, and smaller the organization, it's better to think and collaborate and innovate, right? As you start growing higher and higher, then things become a little complex. But the way we fought it is, the way we put it is a framework. In my observation, there are thinkers and there are doers, right? In the framework, we need to start identifying who are thinkers in the company. Okay, that's one very critical aspect. Second, the way in tech process we give them is, I asked only, I'm 2 or 3, I just use these fundamentals, right? Your role in the company exists only in 3 buckets. Tell me if you're contributing in the for revenue bucket. Tell me if you're helping me reduce the cost bucket, or are you helping me manage my customer satisfaction? If you're neither able to slot yourself in either of the 3 buckets, you're wasting your time in the company, right? Then that sets the tone for every employee in the company. Now, what has also happened is everyone have got some ideas now to either contribute to the revenue or reduce costs or improve customer satisfaction. What happens in the process is a person who's not a good talker, right? His ideas invariably get squashed. As a leader, then I have to find, what we put frameworks then is, how do I get these ideas out? So then we had to put the teams in place in such a way that at the ground level, okay, we start getting feedback, including, right, some of the time where I have my top management, we actually sit on the desks doing their work. Then you experience something, and then it's always easy to do a conversation around. What is important in this process is that for people, irrespective where they are or what pedigree they are in, then you have to make them think out of the box. And that thinking has to be forced in a particular way where they start relating to some of the concepts that you want to drive. And for me, that starts giving us ideas. So now we had a cost challenge ideas, right? As I say, innovation can be both outside and inside, and when you have to transform a company, then you have to start soul searching. A lot goes inside as well. And that's when you need ideas. And then these frameworks allows us to get those ideas.
Cool. So I have 1 or 2 more questions, and we'll go to you, the audience. One of the interesting things is, I noticed when Apple's a very innovative company, it started out with this entire, the new smartphones pretty much really started with Apple. But very quickly over time, actually Google has innovated its way to the point where it's in some ways 4 or 5 times the market share of Apple. And I noticed one thing, that in Apple, you're still today on iOS 6 or iOS 7, right? But where you're in Google is you've gone A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K. And this is why we are at KitKat right now. So Google started 2 years after Apple and still has built 4 versions more of the operating system than Apple itself. That means that Apple used to release everything in 12 to 18 month cycles, and Google releases everything in 6 to 9 month cycles. So essentially, what's really happening is, once upon a time, if you innovated once, you could sit on it and build something forever. Today, innovation is just not that, okay, I produce something. It's like, okay, I produce something, now somebody has to commercialize it, now to produce something else. So how do you get this constant chain of, okay, what's the next thing, what's the next thing, what's the next thing, what's the next thing, what's the next idea? How do you build innovation to be actually a long-term practice as opposed to a one-off? Rajendra had an idea, we're executing,
right,
as opposed to, well, where does the next idea come from?
Right. So I said, no, I mean, you again saying it, I would say innovation is like vegetable, right? Vegetable grown today is going to be stale tomorrow, right? So you got to be really paranoid that you got to keep ahead. If you're in the race, if you are a company whose DNA is innovation, then that innovation has to be continuous. In fact, the vision statement that we all share is, I'd just like to share in this context, is touching souls through unending innovation in technology, thought, and action. Okay, that's how, and we of course have something more, but it's all about unending innovation. So you talk about this, for example, me and our think tank team, we actually have today we are the leaders. The technology that we have produced is worldwide the first at this point of time. There's none, and we have patented a lot of this space. But yet, tomorrow, there's going to be some, this technology is always a game that somebody will come one up. So you have to have a roadmap, and with the roadmap, it needs to be continuously defined that, these are the ideas that I'm going to be working on the next 3 years, 4 years. How are you going to sustain that leadership is going to be somewhat clear. Some roadmap needs to exist, and that roadmap cannot be frozen. It needs to change by the day, because as you learn more, that maybe the customer is not liking it, my hypothesis was bad. So that roadmap needs to be continuously on. And fortunately, in the world of technology, if you have thought about something first, okay, in the international roadmap, you can actually protect that for some time by filing patents. And we do very active filing of patents. So even though I have not executed an idea, which I want to, I know that I will be able to bring it to market only 2 years later, but I've acquired that space, and I'm able to compete with, because the world biggies are going to come at that. But the moment anybody senses that this is a large market, this is a new trend, more people are going to come in. And that's important for us to retain that leadership as we go along.